Next to the stage, we're going to hear from a very good friend of mine, Stefano Facco from Novamont.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will try in 10 minutes to go through a very long presentation, which is not the case, of course. We heard a lot this morning and yesterday. Just two statements were, for me, quite interesting, and I just can confirm them. That without carbon, there is no chemistry. So somebody was talking about reduction of carbon, of course. As we see here in a low-carbon economy, coming back to this statement, low carbon means that you loop the carbon somehow. So you try to, let's say, close the system in order not to exaggerate with consumption. Of course, no organic chemistry without carbon, so therefore this is one of the statements. And the other one I heard that we are moving, and there is a kind of transition from a linear industrial modular. And this is the case. So we were in the past, and still today, we are producing, we are converting, we are using, we are consuming, and throwing away. So this has somehow to change. So this is the essential, let's say, philosophy, I would say, of, and the common, let's say, leitmotif, as you say in German, which brings us all together to discuss these topics. In terms of Novamont, just shortly, I mean, we're not anymore a startup because some of you have seen me for a couple of years now. We started in the 90s, but we came from a big chemical industry. So we are a kind of spin-off or a spin-off of Monte Edison, which was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, a very large chemical company. It was the 5th largest company worldwide. And we tried just, and through all the, say, the stories which followed us and which were, let's say, the basis of our history, we started, let's say, developing a variety of technologies, always based somehow in closing loops, so either in raw materials or in waste management or also in production. We're a benefit company, we're a B Corp company, so we have been certified some years ago, and which means that you have certain, let's say, targets to reach in terms of social behavior, environmental behavior, industrial behavior, and so on and so on. So this is something we are quite proud about it, I have to say. So just very shortly, the company is a medium-sized company, as I say, so we're not anymore a startup. We are roughly 600 employees and roughly 400 million euro turnover. So all the technologies I will just shortly describe today, they are almost, and all of them are somehow industrialized. So they have a value and they are in production. It's still a heavy R&D driven business. So as I repeat every year, I mean the ratio on the R&D cost related to the rest of the business is quite high compared to many other industrial sectors. There are 3 pillars we're working on and which are, let's say, kind of guideline for us. The one is we try to reindustrialize old sites. So we try not to go on the green field or on the brown field, but let's say a little bit more on something which is further developed. So you find old sites and we try to set them up and to reconvert them into what we need for our production interest and technologies. Agriculture, this is of course extremely important today because, I mean, we heard also some other presentations. The better you deal, let's say, the resources in agriculture, the better you get, let's say, an environmental profile. We know that, unfortunately, we all talk about renewability, but you know that agriculture is one of the sources of an environmental, let's say, issues, let's call them this way. So agriculture has to be managed in the future much, much, much better. So it's not an endless consumption, but it's rotation, it's soil treatment, it's soil enrichment. It's not just taking, but putting back into the soil, which will bring us to have, let's say, a more balanced system and which will, let's say, definitely improve the environmental profile of your product. So if you talk about renewable resources, it's not only the technology, which is a value. It's not only the end-of-life option, which may be a value in terms of recycling, might it be chemically, enzymatically, physically, biologically, when you talk about composting and so on. But it's the whole value chain you have to consider if you want to be, let's say, if you want to have a better environmental profile. Then you have to think about solutions, of course, and this is what was one of our drivers as well, that we try always to look downstream at the end of the story. What's the issue about a certain application, a certain product? Might it be, let's say, mostly on consumer side, of course. So might it be a packaging, and there we have designed certain products for certain application. We'll show you later on, if I still have some time, because I lost already 5 minutes, but that's the way it works. And but also if it's about, let's say, intentionally added microplastics, if you talk about lubricants, if you talk about cosmetics, if you talk about fluids which are used in hydraulic systems, which is just everything spilled and lost in the environment, which is something you have to somehow take care of. I will skip this. I mean, we are heavily, we're a company with 5, 6 different production sites. So we have a production site which is taking care of the one for BDO plant, BDO product, which is the first in the world. We have our headquarters in Lombardy, in Piedmont, where we, let's say, have R&D and administration. And then we have different other sites producing mono and dicarboxylic acids. We have one site where we produce just polyesters, one side where we do reactive compounding, one side where we do just biotech research. So it's a splitting of a variety of, let's say, pillars we are working in, which we're quite relevant. As I said before, soil is, let's say, upstream, one of the most important parts to have, let's say, a reasonable environmental profile of your product. So if you take something for the soil, you have to take care of which crop are you using, where are you using this crop. So if you use a crop, I don't know, which consumes a lot of water in an area where there is no water, you have already a dramatic impact. So there you have to be careful. If you use crops which are not subject to rotation, but always mono, at the end of the story, you have a soil which is getting poorer and poorer and poorer. So you have to rotate somehow. You have to take care, as industry, you have to take care also of what farming is doing, because farmers used to work like I'm describing it now in, let's say, previous 100 years. But now more and more industry is driving, and more, let's say, you're under pressure in producing more, having higher yields. And this is, of course, the depletion of the soil, which brings, let's say, to a very negative impact on the whole environmental profile of a product. So when you talk about renewability, do not consider only the technology you have or the downstream application. Go upstream and look as well what you're doing with the soil. If you do it well, then you do a good job already. If you don't do it well, the premises are not so good. We work a lot with farmers as well, of course, because they are our source, so they tell us where are the problems, what can we do, how can we improve the whole process of taking from the soil. Technologies, we have different technologies, so it's not just one technology. I mean, we started with polymer production. We still produce polymers, of course, but all the sourcing has changed over the years. I will skip this quite fast because time is running. Feedstock, as I said before, if you work in agro, it's very important. It's not the discussion about food versus feed versus industrial application. It's, let's say, how do you use them, which are the quantities, in which area you're working, and what is the environmental profile of the feedstock you're using. Feedstock today is not anymore agro, only agro. We heard before some presentations, we talk about waste. What is waste? You should erase the name waste from your vocabulary, because today it's not anymore waste, it's renewable sources, put it that way, sources. What can it be? It can be industrial waste from agro producing and converting plants. It can be wastewater. Wastewater is a very interesting source if you look at about, let's say, anthroposophic wastewater, treated wastewater, how you can use it for fermentation processes or any other things. It can be other wastes, like diapers, for instance. Diapers are a fantastic waste if you have a technology to take out what can be used later on in a downstream process. Downstream, so upstream, we have different technologies, and downstream as well. So working on polyurethanes and polycarbonates, on polyhydroxyalkanoates as well. So studying everything, having certain fixed products where we're working on, like BDO, like azelaic acid, like pelargonic acid. And, sorry, just a second. And this a little bit, let's say, the history of Novamont, which is as well reflected in this slide. So we started with reactive compounding technology. We then said, okay, that's not enough. We started producing our polyesters. Then we said that's not enough. So we said we need other monomers. So we started producing azelaic and pelargonic acid, which was not enough. Then we went into 1,4-BDO production, which is as well not enough. And we're moving now into new monomers as well from renewable resources. So you need a complete package in order to be prepared to satisfy various markets. Applications are in packaging, in retail, in agriculture, let's say in food service ware, by means that all polymeric converting technologies, give me another 30 seconds. All polymeric technologies, you have to be fast, so all polymeric technologies have to be covered. But it's not only traditional ones. We are working as well on coating technologies, so extrusion coating, dispersion coating. We heard a lot about textiles. So there's a lot you can do on textiles, which is extremely interesting, offering different properties in terms of end-of-life option. Important is as well, how do you work? So what I said before, the agro side is extremely important, but you have to decouple the consumption. So in terms that you can use the chemical recycling, you bring it back into your plant. You can do mechanical recycling, you bring it back. You do compost. If you do organic recycling, you bring it back to the farmers, which then use it again instead of using synthetic fertilizers in order to reproduce again. So it has to be always a closed loop system. This is a closed carbon system, which then helps, let's say, to shelter better environmental problems we have today. I skip this, and I skip this as well, and because I'm at zero, so the rest you can read or can ask me, but I'm losing my voice as well, so that's fine. Thank you very much.